George, thank you very much for joining me.
You must remember there is a world beyond GDP. I think that's the title of this session.
Right.
Now, material goods are important, but human beings have never accepted that is the be-all and end-all. There's love, there's hate, there's identity, there's family. I mean, there's a whole set of other things that make us human beings. Now, that doesn't mean that you should ignore the material. I mean, I've been a finance minister when GDP is growing and when GDP isn't growing, and I can tell you it's a lot easier when it's growing.
Right.
But perhaps the conservative insight, I'm a conservative member of Parliament, is that there are other ties that bind us. So you have to constantly work, I think, at national identity, at what it is that brings us together, and try and reinvent that constantly for each new generation. All the technology people have been talking about today, the innovation, the longevity of human life, the diminution in number of deaths from disease. These are all triumphs of humankind, which we should celebrate. But they, I would argue, depend on a set of principles around freedom and free markets and open societies and global order that we take for granted at our peril. These things were created by human beings. They can be dismantled by human beings. Right. You need to preserve some of these global goods that we have created. And what makes me nervous is if you start to erect walls, tear down barriers, tear up international institutions, withdraw from international arrangements.
But that's not an if anymore.
Well,
that's
no,
happening.
if you start to do those things, then you are putting at risk over the long term some of the basics that we have come to take for granted if you grew up in a country like Britain in the latter half of the 20th century and the early part of the 21st century. Stability, peace, prosperity, security, those things we take for granted, but for most of human existence and in many countries, you can't take them for granted. However costly and difficult and messy intervention is, if Britain and America and European allies and voices for stability in the world, like Abu Dhabi, are not in those arguments making their points of view, then others will. And you can't then complain about the state of the world.
So much. George, thank you so much.